You know that feeling. You're sitting in a waiting room, or stuck on a train, or, God forbid, in a meeting that could have been an email, and your brain just goes somewhere else. You start thinking about whether fish get thirsty. You wonder if your fridge light actually turns off when you close the door. You mentally redesign your apartment, then your entire life. We call this being bored. But here's the thing. Your brain, it is not bored. Not even close. In fact, while you're sitting there in a near vegetative state, your brain is running one of its most complex and energy-hungry programs. It's basically the neurological equivalent of your computer's fan going full blast the second you close all your tabs. So, what is actually going on up there? Today, we're diving into the neuroscience of boredom. And trust me, the answer is way more interesting than the meeting that caused it. Let's start with the star of the show, the default mode network, or DMN. Scientists discovered it kind of by accident. Back in the early 2000s, brain researchers were scanning people's brains during tasks, and they kept noticing something weird. When participants stopped doing the task and just rested, a specific set of brain regions lit up like a Christmas tree. They called it the default mode network, which is a very boring name for something absolutely wild. Think of the DMN as your brain's autopilot mode, except instead of just keeping the plane level, autopilot is apparently writing poetry, planning your future, and replaying that cringeworthy thing you said at a party in 2014. The DMN is active when you're daydreaming, thinking about other people, imagining the future, or reflecting on yourself. And the kicker? It consumes almost as much energy as when you're actively concentrating on a task. So the next time someone tells you you're doing nothing, you can say, actually, my default mode network is operating at near peak capacity, and I'd appreciate some quiet. Here's a misconception worth killing. Boredom is not the absence of thought. It's not your brain powering down like a laptop on low battery. Boredom is actually a motivational state. It's your brain sending you a very polite and then increasingly impatient message that says, hey, we could be doing something more meaningful. Just a thought. Psychologists define boredom as the uncomfortable feeling that arises when you want to be engaged but can't find anything satisfying to engage with. It's not apathy. Apathy is not wanting anything at all. Boredom is wanting something and not finding it. It's the hunger, but for stimulation. In evolutionary terms, this makes a lot of sense. A brain that just sits there contentedly staring at a rock is a brain that doesn't innovate, doesn't explore, doesn't solve problems. Boredom is the mental itch that made our ancestors get up and go find something better to do, like, say, invent fire or develop agriculture. So, congratulations. When you're bored, you're not being lazy. You are experiencing an ancient neurological drive toward progress. You're welcome to put that on your resume. Okay, so boredom activates the DMN and signals that we want more. But what specifically is the brain doing during that time? A few things, and they're fascinating. First, memory consolidation. When your mind wanders, your brain uses that unstructured time to connect dots. It links new information to old memories, finds patterns, fills in gaps. This is part of why you sometimes get your best ideas in the shower, on a walk, or, yes, in that boring meeting. Your brain stopped processing incoming data and started actually organizing everything it already had. It's like your brain is a very messy desk. Focused work keeps throwing papers onto it. Boredom is when your brain finally gets to file things. Second, problem solving and creativity. Studies have shown that people who are allowed to be bored before a creative task consistently outperform people who were entertained beforehand. One study had participants do a boring task, copying numbers out of a phone book, and then immediately do a creativity test. They crushed it compared to the control group. Being bored, it turns out, is like charging a creativity battery. And we've spent the last decade strapping ourselves to a constant entertainment drip and wondering why we feel creatively drained. Third, self-reflection. The DMN is deeply involved in what neuroscientists call the narrative self, the story you tell yourself about who you are. During boredom and mind-wandering, you're essentially running a background process that updates that story. You process emotions, think through relationships, simulate future scenarios, and figure out what you actually want. Basically, boredom is free therapy, except the therapist is also you. And sometimes that therapist goes off on completely irrelevant tangents about whether penguins have knees. They do, by the way. Here's where things get a bit uncomfortable. We live in an era where boredom has become nearly illegal. The second you feel even a flicker of it, there's a glowing rectangle in your pocket ready to fill the void with infinite scroll, videos of dogs doing tricks, and passionate arguments between strangers about movies from 2003. And look, no judgment. We all do it. But here's what's actually happening. Every time you pick up your phone to escape boredom, you're interrupting the DMN right in the middle of its work. You're slamming the filing cabinet shut. You're canceling therapy. You're pulling the charging cable out of that creativity battery at 12%. Researchers have found that people who are chronically unable to sit with boredom show lower creativity scores, reduced self-awareness, and, ironically, higher rates of anxiety. Because all those things boredom was trying to help you process, they don't just disappear, they pile up. Your brain is like a very dedicated intern who just wants to do some filing, and every time it tries, you walk in and dump another load of TikToks on the desk. Okay, here's a nuance that's worth mentioning. Not all boredom is the same. Psychologists have actually identified up to 5 different types of boredom, ranging from calm and mildly pleasant to "this is existential suffering and I question the meaning of my entire existence." On the mild end, you have indifferent boredom, a kind of relaxed, slightly detached state where everything is fine, you're just not particularly stimulated. This is the cozy Sunday afternoon version. Then there's calibrating boredom, where you're restless and not sure what you want. And on the far end of the spectrum, reactant boredom, where you are so bored, so trapped, so understimulated that you're genuinely aggressive about it. This is the "if this meeting doesn't end in the next 4 minutes, I will walk into the sea" version. Interestingly, that intense, desperate boredom is actually associated with poorer outcomes, more impulsivity, more risk-taking, less creative thinking. So the goal isn't to maximize boredom, it's to let yourself exist in the calmer, open version of it, the kind where the DMN can actually do its job. Think of it as the difference between a peaceful walk in the forest and being locked in a sensory deprivation tank. Both are low stimulation. Only one of them is relaxing. Give the intern a break. So, where does this leave us? Your brain, when you're bored, is not idle. It's consolidating memories, generating creative connections, building your sense of self, and preparing you for whatever comes next. The default mode network is running full tilt, doing maintenance work that focused, task-based attention literally cannot do. Boredom isn't a bug. It's a feature, an ancient, slightly uncomfortable, deeply productive feature. The modern world has convinced us that every moment must be filled, that silence is failure, and empty time is wasted time. But neuroscience tells a different story. Some of the best thinking your brain will ever do happens precisely when you stop trying to think. So the next time you're waiting in line, or sitting on a train, or stuck in a, meeting, maybe try something radical. Put the phone down. Let the boredom happen. Trust your default mode network. It knows what it's doing. Even if, for a few minutes, it's just thinking about whether your fridge light actually turns off. If you enjoyed this video, your DMN probably needs a rest. Subscribe and we'll give it more material to daydream about.